everybody. What's up? Welcome to the end of Rainbow for Guild Fantasmagoria. This is the time we take about 45 minutes to talk about the campaign we just had. And talk about our favorite moments, do whatever. Maybe get some questions from our Discord. By the way, join our Discord. That way you can judge us and tell us to our faces. That we'd love it. We actually really enjoy our Discord. So come be a community with us. We want to play with you. We want to talk to you. We want all of it. And yeah, I guess start with introductions. I'm Laura. In this campaign, I was so many people. I was Laura. I was also Jonathan. He had a last name. I don't even remember anymore. Jonathan. And then I was also Torva for a good 3 hours. It was great. Next, I'm going to toss it up to our guest. By the way, thank you for joining us for the first time ever. We loved having her. So go ahead.
Wow. I'm Mindy. I only played the one, but I had many, many names. Lady Elizabeth Matilda Catherine Henneland Williams III. And, guest, I'm hoping to become an intrepid hero, which means you'll be seeing a lot more of me.
That's how you get a job, people. You just stay.
You just don't leave. Just don't.
Look, in this economy, if you're straight out of college, straight out of high school, don't have a job yet, just go to a place and start working. Eventually, they'll pay you.
They'll think you work there already. You'll be like, "Where's my paycheck?" They'll be like, "Oh no, paperwork." Sorry.
Oh, I'm so sorry. It's weird. You're not in the system. Let me just fix that for you.
Next.
I'm Sera, and I also played a lot of people, a lot of names, but not as many names as Lady Elizabeth. And I'm just happy to be here. Let's shoot it up to our main man.
We love him. Hey, buddy.
Something about being called a main man is so...
You're the main man.
Just...
My main squeeze.
Is only man better?
Only
the
man.
Only
that
man.
Kind of honestly, that sounds a little sexier.
Donate to
subscribe. Exactly. Hi, I'm Cam.
You're not looking like Fabio in this video.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Hey, kiddos! My name is Cameron. Look at my chest. I played the most people.
That's true.
I played Dr. E. I played Elizabeth at one point, Eleanor Gray, Dan Brookins, that fucking dwarf guy with the beard that nobody remembers, Leonardo da Vinci. That's a big one for me. The sand, the ice, the blue, and of course the Archdevil Mephistopheles.
And our favorite boy.
Don't forget
our
Percy.
Best boy.
And then my favorite character.
Oh, also
Brendan.
one more.
Yeah.
You also played
Lee
Joseph.
Mulligan. And I played Joseph and your dad and those two ladies who we never saw again because they were too mean.
There were three of them.
The best.
There were three of them.
Brendan, this listening, Lee Mulligan.
Lee Mulligan.
Exactly. Yes, for those that don't get that joke, the reason that he wasn't named Brennan was because Cameron said it couldn't be too on the nose. But he absolutely would have been if I had had my way.
Hey, Brennan Lee Mulligan.
Well, if we learned anything from this campaign, nobody had their way at all, ever, at any point.
Why do you think I wrote a 3.5-page epilogue?
Because you're a storyteller, Mindy. That's why.
Exactly.
And now I'm not sure if that's like some sort of trigger word.
I mean, and I think a great place to start off, a big repeating question in the Discord was, how fucking dare you, Cam?
How fucking dare society?
No, but seriously, so a little bit of a peek back at the beginnings of Streaming Rainbow. When Sarah, Cam, David, and I all got together and had this idea to start off with, we all said, okay, everybody throw in your pitches for an idea for a campaign. And Sarah had Hallie's Children, I had Gillyton, David wasn't sure yet, and then Cam said, let me tell you about this idea. And I went, okay. So I will tell you, playing this campaign with like just pure faith in you, because I trust you as a player and as a DM, like where did this come from for you?
Okay, so I've had this idea for a long time. That also helps.
That's part of it.
But like the idea of like Lord Byron, the asshole that he was, bringing his
Major.
Major asshole. Like he probably had bringing Percy Shelley and his girlfriend at the time and some other people to like this little house, and they all told stories together, and they all like kind of like picked them apart and like extrapolated upon them. Like just like imagine the first time like if you didn't catch on the story that Mindy's character Lady Elizabeth kind of came from was Frankenstein the Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley. And the cool thing is what the fuck is his name? Some dude was also there, and he wrote The Vampire with a Y, not an I.
Yeah, some
and
doctor that nobody remembers.
Some bullshit. And then Bram Stoker took that and made that into Dracula, which is a lot more well known. So it's really that story that kind of inspired this. I was like, okay, so why did Frankenstein stay Frankenstein, and this thing was known as Dracula and not like vampire? Also, a lot like a heavily that's not how words work, not in that verb. A heavy influence for like the visuals and kind of like the putting together of this space, this like weird interdimensional like jumping and like porting in was Midnight Gospel. I don't know if anybody's ever seen that, but it's like a cartoon based on some like that uses the audio of like a real life podcast.
I did a review of that.
It's like real trippy, but the main thing is he like sticks his head into a vagina and ports into his consciousness into like other beings on different planets. So I was like, okay, so that's kind of like reading, right?
Vagina is reading, same thing.
Vagina is reading, but the main thing is like it's just us telling a story, right? Or like retelling a story, because Laura and Sarah, they knew pretty much like the plot structure going in, and they had the choice to help Elizabeth or hinder Elizabeth, and they chose to help her every time. So based on their choice to help, I was like, okay, if they're helping, I'm not helping. So everything that they did kind of countered what I did too. But yeah, long story short, I tried to do this with another group, and the DM was like, that's a little complicated. I'm gonna do something else, which was fair and like was good for that group, and I love him. But I'm just judging. I was like, well, you'll get it. I swear to God, you'll understand what you're doing once you play the game. In fact, I think it's a little easier, like knowing like where the story is headed to like make decisions either in character or out of character, or against your character, I should say. And then there's like also this idea of like the meta. What is that? mean? Why is it bad to metagame? And I'm always a big proponent on metagaming, because the meta is everything known about this game you're playing. It's the rules, it's the people playing the people, it's the color of the sky, or things like that, like the mechanics of it. Playing with those is the meta game. And you are always playing a meta game. Knowing to roll dice is metagaming.
Yeah.
So I don't understand, like, there's such, like, I don't know, like, when that line becomes, oh, you can't metagame anymore. So I said, fuck that shit. I don't care. Here's all the info. I gave them stat blocks. I gave them everything. And I still think it was challenging for y'all.
Oh, yeah.
Ah,
Well, I just found it interesting how after I got to read what those were, how me not knowing those choices still ended up with the same results. I found that was pretty interesting.
oh, yeah. Well, I think like there is something to be said about doing this campaign first with storytellers, with people who understand character and understand how a story propels itself forward, right? Like, we understood that the character we created to be a hero is not like somebody that we should like protect and like covet and like hope nothing bad happens to them. Otherwise it wouldn't have been compelling. No matter how fucking hard Mindy like rebelled against the machine and tried to make that happen. And like the story
That's why
I wrote
an epilogue.
yeah, exactly. Even that is like changing the meta narrative of like what we did, because like Mindy feels for this character, but like being the hero in a tragedy means
In a horror.
everything. Yeah, in a horrific, a horror, just means everything goes bad for you. It teaches us a lesson. Right? Like, what did we learn from Victor Frankenstein? We learned maybe like pushing the boundaries of what we learn, just for the fucking sake of it, isn't the best thing to do.
We learned you should have follow through.
Or forsaking what you have done because it wasn't like the initial result is not like good, not altruistic. So, yeah. And like sometimes the fucking old ass white guy wins, and it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
Like when like art and like theater was like coming into like the Renaissance, people were very, very, very interested in like what they called slice of life theater, and that carried us through like naturalism and modernism, and like people are just interested in what people are doing. I think we have a fascination in viewing the worst case scenario that can happen to somebody, because we can take catharsis in it not happening to us. It's that like German Schadenfreude of it all.
Yeah.
Shout out to Avenue Q. But like, long story short, I wanted to compel people to tell a story about telling stories, and kind of like deconstruct what it means to tell a story, and even like use the system too.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, like Cam said, Sera and I knew from the beginning, the two of us knew basically not everything, because he did fucking rock us, but at the beginning he gave us a choice. So I want to know, Sera, I got it almost right. And first time.
Not bad.
What you chose to be helpful to the protagonist. Did you have to think hard about that? Like, what was your thought process? Or were you like, yeah, I want to be helpful?
Yeah, no, it was what sounded like fun. You know, it didn't sound like if I was going to be in opposition, then I would have wanted to play a very different character. I would have wanted to play a character who was not so straightforward and not so action hero-y. Yeah, trying to it just didn't seem like something that I'd be in for, you know. I wanted to help tell a story about pushing on in the face of difficulty. So I wanted to be heroic in that sense, you know, and that was the only way I felt like I was gonna have fun with this.
Also, you got to do over 100 points of damage in a battle.
That was amazing.
It was
That
so
was
good.
amazing.
That was so
Just
fun. I was so desperately hoping that would one shot her and we could go on with things.
it was so close. It was so close to killing her.
How close were we?
I
think it was 20,
You-
20 hit points?
I don't think it was like that much. I think it was like about like 60 something. Like watching it back, I was like, oh, that was probably like it like ended up being like 60 something hit points.
Yeah.
But it probably rocked, like everything about that finale rocked me to my like I was like sitting pretty the first 7 episodes. I was like, I understand what's happening. I understand like where they're going and like kind of like what story that they're trying to tell. And I understand that Mindy is going to try to do everything she can to like pick apart and break what I'm trying to do. But at the very end, I was like, that was not. It was. I underestimated. I got complacent, is what I got. I was like, it's the end. We just need to end it.
Yeah.
And I didn't think that.
That one dice roll that could have fucking
Yeah, if it had been
destroyed your
one number
session.
higher, you would have been fucked.
Her decision about the
Yeah. For those
Reading.
that don't know, it's the when I went to look into Leonardo's mind, it was the question of, are Sera and Laura there? And Elizabeth, both answers would have made sense. And so I picked up a D4 and it's like 1 and 2. They're not there. 3 and 4 they are, and it rolled a 2. So it's like, I think you needed a break. I think
Yeah.
you got up and was like, my heart is pounding. Hold on.
Oh yeah. I got up. I laid. Okay, but I think before we discuss that, I think it's important to ask you, like, how did you feel about the meta narrative, I don't even know what to call that, but I think there was like layers to this. There was like what it became was us as players, like Sera, Lara Prime, Mindy, Cameron, have this metaverse, right?
Yeah.
Have this knowledge that we are playing a game. And then there is like the Sera and the Lara Beta who have this like meta Scheherazade, realize that they go into stories, and then there is the game, the story itself. So like in this like world above this Scheherazade, what was that like for y'all?
So
And
do
how
you
did it
mean like
evolve?
the top layer, like us, or the middle, the beta? The beta layer.
For alphas, for all our alphas out there, how did you feel about the beta narrative? We'll call above game alpha. We'll call the Hellscape beta,
Yeah.
and we'll call
Omega,
we'll call
obviously.
Elizabeth. I was gonna say Epsilon, but yeah, Omega is fine.
No, I for me, it was a fascinating puzzle. After every session, again, behind the curtain, we have a deconstruct and we talk about, roses, thorns, buds. Like we really talk about the session and what we liked, what we didn't like, what we are looking forward to. And after every session, one of them was, I'm going to get this at some point. But, no, so I also chose to be a help, but not really. I did come into this with Jonathan being like, I'm in it for me. Like, and so was Laura Beta. Laura was here to do a job. She was gonna do whatever she was gonna like. I mean, whatever works best for her. Sometimes that's saying fuck you to your boss. Sometimes it's going with it. So yeah, it was really fun. I got to play this kind of morally ambiguous character, which I do not get to play very often. So I usually end up being so nice and helpful. And I was like, nah, I'm not going to be helpful, or I will be, but there's no altruism here. But it made it like it added a level of challenge. Because again, yeah, like knowing everything didn't make it easier. It made it harder because it's like, okay, but now I know everything. Now I can overthink everything. I studied stat blocks in a way I never study stat blocks. Like, I mean, I won't like. I talked to Sera about this because he shared the stat block for what Gray was initially, and in getting ready for the final battle, I was assuming they were still that stat block. They were not. So it was a flesh golem originally, and the person who creates the flesh golem can persuade them. The creator can do something to a flesh golem, like if they're going berserk or whatever. So in the Discord, I slyly was like, who created her? Is it Elizabeth? Because I'm thinking Laura Beta would know this and could be like, if in the fight, I could be like, Elizabeth, persuasion, you're the creator, like go. It wouldn't have mattered because Gray was not that person by the end of it, but yeah, it made I was overthinking everything, but I loved it. It was such a fun challenge. That's how I felt about it.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
I also like that you came at it from a place of self-preservation. Because outwardly, like watching back, it looks like you are helping her the whole time. So I think that says something about like, no matter what I'm doing, no matter who I'm looking out for, if we're provided with a common enemy, we're gonna just like work together no matter what.
Yeah.
Interesting. But and yeah, I think honestly, if that would have ever come up, I don't think so. So like the flesh golem is Gray using the elixir on herself.
Yeah.
So the elixir makes her into a golem, and she's the one who created the elixir. So I think she in and of herself is the golem's creator.
Yeah.
But there are a multitude of Grays. And if that if that was a route. Yeah.
Thank you. Yay!
Yeah. So I was definitely a task that could have worked. And I think even with like the new stat block that Gray had in the Arctic in the finale, that if you would have said something like that, if you would have been like, hey, let's use this plane shift to like bring her to a place where she already is, and then convince that Gray to stop the Mephisto Gray, I think I would have probably been like, that's cool as shit. That works.
So many different things.
There are a lot of different options. It's just I think with the amount of time we had, and honestly, I think even if we would have had like 2 weeks or like more between episodes, y'all could have done more of like, hey, let's fucking plan. Let's get this guy. And there would have been a lot more, I think, like you could have figured out. But the biggest reveal was something I didn't ever expect to tell y'all, was that everybody is working against you always. So I made it so that like Scheherazade is like, nothing is not a story, is what I was trying to tell you.
Yeah.
I was trying to say that the choices you make like stick, and They never change. The only thing that you can do is branch off from the already created timeline, essentially. Like every decision you make is a new chapter in a new story. So going back to change something about something that's already happened doesn't negate it from happening.
Yeah.
It just creates something else. Those rules govern not only the stories that you go into, but also the life you live.
Right.
I really just wanted to like to hit home that Elizabeth wasn't a character,
Yeah.
right? That y'all kind of understood what she was going through, not knowing what was happening to you, not knowing that there were like these strings that pulled your life no matter what. And I've always been like really interested in the story of like Faustus.
Mm-hmm.
And like knowing that in D&D, Mephistopheles is the ruler of the 9th level of hell. I've always found that really interesting of like, what do like lies and falsehoods like mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because like every fiction that we tell is a falsehood, is a lie. Even like real life stories are like embellished and have a structure, and I don't know if that is like wholly true. If we like, this is getting a little existential and a little like, hey, this is my views on the universe. But like, if everything is just like fucking chaos, that we kind of just like stick to and like put meaning to. When we put meaning to it, I think we are like inherently lying to ourselves. Like trying to create society, trying to create structure out of like whatever ball of consciousness we live in is in and of itself like a falsehood. So I don't know. A lot of ideas spinning in my head that I tried to like throw spaghetti at a wall and see if they stuck. And I think the things that they did and the things that like y'all reacted to, I built upon.
Yeah. Mindy, how was it for you, like coming in, having to take your headphones off, knowing that you were out of the loop, and then transitioning into everything opening up?
Honestly, I was happy with like taking off the earphones and just going with the story because I didn't have to worry about being dictated into a direction. Having it transition so that Leonardo is telling me all the lore, and then what you folks didn't know was like the day before the final, I was there back and forth with Cameron going, okay, what is this? What is this happening? Who does this? How were these relationships? Just getting all this info, which ultimately was dead end after dead fucking end. But that was interesting in that now I had this kind of knowledge, but I never looked at it as like Scheherazade was the real world. It's essentially I was pulled from the real world into the heavens, into the afterlife, got the information that is only known to those who, pass through to the other side. And then it was like, okay, now I have to take this back to the real world. Like I never saw Scheherazade or anything as anything other than this is hell. So none of that applied to this is a reality. It's like, no, the reality is back on Earth, back in my book, whatever you want to call it. So yeah, no, I thought it was an interesting switch when I finally got that inner knowledge, but honestly, I was kind of happy that I didn't get it to begin with, because then I could just be like, okay, reaction. What is happening so I can react?
Yeah. I know I wouldn't have handled it that well. I hated having to take my headphones off when it was finally our turn. But yeah, so I know how I felt about like the rug being pulled out from under me, but Sera, what was your reaction to Cam's?
The very ending rug
No,
pull?
not the very ending.
Oh, okay.
Just us, like the fact that we were everything we had done, like yeah, we were part of a huge conspiracy rebellion that we didn't know about.
And it's interesting because having that meta narrative that we had, for me, was not a positive. Like to me, it was like seeing the bars of the prison that I was in, because it was having that story in the first place is like, okay, this is what I have to fight against. This is what the conflict is, and therefore this is what I will try to do. But it was always destined to go the same way. Like, I feel like, and I'm drifting away from your question, but I feel like, Cameron, you didn't need us to help you tell the story. You just needed us to help you with the tragedy. Like, the story was already there. It was already going to go to the ending that you had it at. And our choices could only affect the details of that story, not the destination. And so when I was finally like disconnected, when it was finally like, oh, someone else is being told this, it was kind of a relief, because it was like, okay, now I can just pretend that things can go right. I can be a character in this story instead of part of the narrative.
Yeah.
And that was a relief for me, even though it was unexpected and I didn't know what the heck to do with myself while I was waiting. But
yeah, the reason, guys,
I colored.
there's no Sera or Lara in the cutaway that was just Mindy and Cameron, because it was me. It was all me, because I was over here like la la la. I was the worst. I would have been so distracting.
you
But
put
kind
it
of
on your nose.
I was like, yeah, I can't.
Well, when I
can't.
was out, you had to cut my mic because I kept singing to myself,
just that
so
first
that I
time,
wouldn't hear through the headphones.
just that first time, it was all good. But no, kind of to your point of it being relief, I had that feeling at the very end when I got to basically give the middle finger to Mephistopheles,
Yeah.
whatever, by going into the void. I was like, fuck you, dude. I mean, it turns out it doesn't matter, and I'm still stuck in the cycle, and everything's awful. But I got to have that moment of
epilogue
catharsis. No, that's not real.
But it is.
Cameron said it was written down. It's real.
It is a version that is real. The version where I go into the void and then go back to my job is also real. That's the point. There's many things.
It's really interesting to me to like listen to all three of you talk, because I think all of you have such a different perspective on like what this meant. And like your experience playing it. Like, I love what you just said, Sera, about like, I don't know if I needed your help to tell the story. I just needed you to like tell the tragedy of it, or like expound upon the tragedy of it.
Yeah.
Because I think that is so true. I think, but at the same time, I don't know what the story would have been like without the tragedy. I think, yeah, like bare bones, like skeleton of it. They're like were events that happened and that didn't change based on like what I had given you, but bringing meaning to something, I think is what makes it like come alive. Is what makes it like art. Is what makes it a worth telling. Right? A story is a story, but like, why do we tell it? Yeah, I think yeah, I think like without you, it's just like a novel, or like, but like with you, it's living, it's breathing. It has reaction. It has drive. It has pace. Without you, it's I don't know. It's not interesting.
Mhm.
I think this usually when I DM, I love to make the world a sandbox that you can like play around in, and I will usually not write a narrative, write a plot, or like even think of one, or even like think of an ending of what will happen. I just like flesh out characters, and I see like how the characters interact in like not only the space, but how PCs, player characters, interact with them. And like in a sense, that's very like there was some of that, but I really like stuck to my guns and was like, no, this is the story. Like it ends when you do this thing. And I think there were a lot of different like ways to get to like there are a lot of like ways to rock my shit, and ways to like take over that narrative, and like take that away from me. But like Brennan Lee Mulligan said something about railroading. It's less of like making you go a direction, and more of putting barriers in your way, so that like he described it as like a waterfall, like falling to a destination. And all players are going to do is try to get to that destination as fast as possible. Because that is their goal, that is the end, that is what they want. And my job was to obstruct that, make it take as long as possible for you to get to the ending, whatever it may be. And I think that is like the embellishment of it. That is like that, because like I could read that. I read that story. I read those notes in what, like 5-7 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. But like at the same time, the tools there, like the fly machine at the last battle, if y'all would have like got on that and rode away, there would have been like nothing I could do. If you would have, like I said, I said, no, I understand the win condition of this. You can't do that. I was trying to make that as hard as possible. And I like also, if you that nat 20 persuasion that you got on Leonardo allowed you to keep that scroll of plane shift. So if you would have just like got Brendan plane shift out of there before the battle would have happened, the ending of that narrative would have been completely different as well.
That's in my epilogue. The fact that he said that she needed to be happy dictated me using that.
Mm-hmm. But I also think like a big example, or like a shining example of did we really have a choice, or were we just playing the tragedy, was the very, very end after y'all had died and you had to choose between the doors. Because I always expected you to choose the darkness.
Mm-hmm.
I never expected you to go towards happiness. Yeah.
It was really
I
interesting.
stalled a lot because I actually was really tempted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it was really
And that was the
interesting
thing.
to watch that. To watch like both. It's interesting to kind of see the psychology of where people are too. Like, because it's all meta. Like it's like Lara Alpha, Lara Beta are both like, you know what? Fuck this. Fuck it. Like, fuck it. We were both of the same mind. So it was, I wasn't sure which way Sera Beta was going to go. You know, maybe there was more stories that Sera wants to tell. But watching Mindy as Elizabeth, I was like, this is the most Elizabeth shit I've ever seen in my life. And it was very funny for me because it's funny to watch, like, because it was so, like, as a character, it was so frustrating to get Elizabeth to do anything. So just everything. The barbarian that was Lara Beta was just like, oh, I just want to rage. But it was, there was a little bit of a cynical humor in it too, of like, silly Elizabeth thinking this means anything. Like, I was watching her grasp at straws, and I'm just like, I'm in the void being like, silly. It's silly you think you have a choice. So it's a really interesting mindset, like, of my psychology. I was like, am I okay? I'm gonna need to check in with myself. That's some dark shit, Laura. All right. But it's just really interesting to watch how everybody handles things.
Absolutely. I think that's in part because the reason I love D&D is because the only information that personally as a DM I like to give out is what a character's 5 senses tells them. Mm-hmm. One of my favorite literary devices is a false narrative. And I think every TTRPG, every Dungeons and Dragons game that gives you straight up your base stats, this is how smart you are, this is how wise you are, this is how intelligent you are, this is how strong you are, dexterous, steadfast, tells you that you are living through the lens of something that is not perfect. You can see that on the stat sheet. You don't have 20s across the board. You don't have 30s across the board. There are some elements of you as a human, as a humanoid, as whatever you're playing, that just inherently gets things wrong. And that was amplified, I think, in this. I think most everything I told you as a different character was a complete lie. The first thing that I really lied about was, if you die in the story, you die in real life.
Right.
And the minute Sera died, she woke back up.
Mm-hmm.
And the minute you stepped into death, you woke back up. I think, what meaning can we bring to our lives, the stories we tell, if they don't, if they're not tied to fate, don't mean anything in the grand scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean if everybody, I don't know. I just and that was also very much when Elizabeth made that persuasion check and tried to mind read Leonardo, I was like, oh fuck, she's going to realize that everything is a lie.
And she did.
And she did. But it was also really, really interesting what you did with that information. You said, okay, I have that. I understand that everything I have been told by these people is probably not true. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fight that motherfucker. I don't care. I'm being driven by emotion. I'm going to fight her, and by force of fucking will and strength, I'm going to change this. And then everything bad happened.
Epilogue.
And then the Sparrowhawk absolutely rocked.
That was awesome. Getting into the Sparrowhawk.
Mm-hmm. But Sarah's choice to play that character was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
To have somebody who, in a combat situation, in fisticuffs, could be literally anything I throw like any physical human in that story was great. Because it like if it really like foiled the people that the betas essentially, who she became after, like when she got out of it, like so much so that when given the choice, she went right back to the Sparrowhawk. Like when she knew it probably was like a dangerous idea. Do you want to speak to that? Why did you choose the character you chose?
I love the Sparrowhawk. I've never had so much fun just sort of like being a rollicking action hero before, and I felt that the Sparrowhawk was this force for not even a force for good, more like a force for where she was always going to be on the side of awesomeness, and I felt like that was what was needed, was someone who had that kind of positivity and magnetism to them that would to have the best chance of creating goodness in the story that we were in. So when I lost her, I wanted her back.
Hell yeah. Plus she didn't get to do 100 and some points of damage. Yeah.
That was pretty sweet too, yeah.
Listen, Sparrowhawk spent the entire first 6 episodes just like being real pissed that she didn't know how to ride horses. So she wanted to be on her boat. This is where
Animal
I belong.
handling, my one weakness.
Yeah. And then I had kind of the opposite situation where Jonathan's story was done. Like, yeah, the only person that he truly loved outside of himself was dead, and he was pissed about it. And he was like, basically, if Laura had reached out to Jonathan and been like, hey, like, do this, Jonathan would have been like, go fuck yourself. Elizabeth can go freeze for all I care. Like, she ruined my life. like
I'm actually not going to be there. Sorry.
I'm not doing it. Like, yeah, you fucked around with Elizabeth Grey. You ruined his life. Like his basically the love of his life dead. And but again, like the porting in, like taking on more of Laura, like where Laura Beta is like, okay, here's like, I'm pissed. Like Laura Beta was pissed. So I'm going to find the motherfucker who's big and strong and smash things. And then Torva got to swing an axe around. So like, that was lovely. Not over 100 points of damage lovely, but it was still lovely. I don't get to be that very often. Pure barbarian. But we are coming towards the kind of the wrapping up part. I think before, because Mindy does have an epilogue that she's going to read, but before that, is there any like final thoughts? Well, okay, no, actually, I've got a question. Cam, this isn't the last time we're going to be seeing the guild, probably. I'm just going to be a little bit of time before we come back to it, but what are you... I'm curious. I'm just, I mean, you can't share your secrets, but like, how are you going to do it now that the cat's out of the bag? Like different secrets.
Or are you?
Or are you?
Yeah, I think the great thing about this setting, like Scheherazade, the place where you go into other stories, is that like, no matter what we know about it, I think that was like even shown from the beginning. Like no matter what we know about it, we can tell an infinite amount of stories. Like I think like just off the top of my head, like we could have a story that is entirely in like have a entirely in a story. Like we
Mhm.
don't even like need to like pour out into Scheherazade at the end of every episode, but like maybe like little things drop and you're like, oh shit, I'm not, I don't exist, I'm in this, like pages or things like that. I think that there's like a lot of possibilities, especially since the people who work there, like the demons that work there, don't remember everything.
Mhm.
And like it's like part of their contract that they sign away that he has the ability to alter their memories.
And also, they
It's-
didn't even
it-
get to explore the heaven aspect of it too, which, I mean, if these are circles of hell, there's also circles of heaven that are.
Or are they?
Or are there?
The only thing Mindy and I talked about this, but that was something that like she really latched onto. And the
I wanted
only
allies.
yeah, but the only resources I would give you were stories of the thing that other people told of heaven, right? Like, I don't know if there is anything besides Scheherazade. I do have one last question.
Yeah.
If you could do this all over again, what would you do differently?
Epilogue.
We're gonna hear what Mindy would have done differently. I don't think I would have done anything differently. I feel like
Okay.
because I when I try to come up with a character, I'm not trying to be like smart about it or like game efficient about it. I'm purely just like, who is this person that I'm playing? And this was many people that I was playing. But the main person was self-preservation Laura, of like, I'm going to do what I want to do, whether that because it feels good or because it amuses me, or like the fact that Laura wore a fucking onesie for every session. Like that was because I made a joke in the first thing. In the first session, I was like, I show up in a onesie, and then bam, joke. Now I have too many onesies, guys. But like, yeah, so I wouldn't have done anything differently because that was my goal for the entire campaign, was to be as true to that person as I could possibly be. So
I would not change anything, and I'll tell you why. My favorite moment in this game was when we came back from having our minds like restored partially, and suddenly everything made sense, where I'd been sort of floundering the entire time because like I didn't have any character background for Sera. I didn't know what Sera did. I don't know what Sera ate lunch. I didn't know anything like that. And all of a sudden, with just a few words, that all made sense. Like, oh, that's because there's nothing there. there was never anything there. And that click in my brain was so satisfying that I would not change anything just for the chance to get that click again.
yeah.
And while I did say epilogue, and yes, a lot of the answer is in what I have written, beyond like just a better understanding of the mechanics, character-wise, I'm not sure she would have done anything differently, simply because it's like all the things that she wanted to do, she were met with walls, but it doesn't mean that she wouldn't have tried, because like her whole thing was battling fate. It's like she never would have stopped battling fate. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think character-wise I would have changed anything. Mechanic-wise, I wished I'd known more about how to make the mechanics work better in my favor. But character-wise, I wouldn't have done anything different.
Love that. Yeah, that's a great part about this too. We all got to like learn. I mean, I did something different for sure. Like on both, honestly.
Yeah.
Both Jonathan and Torva I've never played that high level of a bard. And so like being that persuasive was really fun. But yeah, it was all learning for me.
I am pretty new to D&D. Like I've played Fate for a good 15 years, but only like D&D for like a year now. So I've never been an artificer period or a human. So it's just like having the limitations of both and trying to figure out what they do was completely new to me.
Yeah. We're going to pause for a second because Cam's having mic issues.
But no, Artificer definitely is a fucking hard class to jump into, like when you don't know anything about D&D. Most, I think that's because it's a newer one too, and it was made based on like people who have played the game and wanted to do something like else besides just the basic stuff. But I think you did like a really good job, because I think ultimately D&D does it like the mechanics are there for like puzzle solving and fighting people, and what we were doing was not mainly
for the most part. No.
Yeah, and like what you were doing was not mainly that, especially like living in these stories. Like Artificer was just a fun like title to put on this person who like invented and created things in this world. And to that, I don't want to talk too much, but like to that point, it was very interesting and great to see you take this character who is based off of somebody who just didn't like what the world gave them and decided to corrupt it. And you made this whole new person who all they wanted was just to be content. And I think the main, like, though this was based off of like plot wise, skeleton structure wise, Frankenstein, The Modern Prometheus by Mary Shelley, it wasn't that, because it like that hinges on two main characters who, like, one, the world happened to them, and one, like, they like, are suffering the consequences of the seeds they sow. And I think Elizabeth was very much not Victor Frankenstein, but the creation, the monster in this, because the world just kept happening to her, and all she could do was try to figure out how to survive in it, and how to make peace with it. And I think you did.
Epilogue.
Question mark?
Yeah, well, this story, the way you were telling it, had to have the horror ending, which actually, as I was, near the end of the last episode, I was like, okay, how is this going to be the horror ending? And was actually kind of looking forward to how things are going to fuck. But, Elizabeth would never let anybody else tell her story but her. Hence me needing to write down the ending for myself.
Yeah.
It's like, she's going to fucking fight fate. And so in that, yes, it ended up well for her, which is on my screen. So it's written down in canon. Haha.
Yeah. I could also write, say it. No. Yeah. It is, but like, it is real. It is like the story we told on camera, right? Is a real people doing real things that now have happened. Just as when you wrote that and you shared it, it is a real thing that has happened. And if I go down and I write on a piece of paper, Elizabeth poopied her pantsy, that is a real thing.
No.
That happened.
No.
Joke's on you. She don't wear pants. She's a goddamn lady. lady.
And we can say and I'll leave. This will be the last tangent I go on, the last thing I say. But the real interesting thing is like when I like was teaching acting, a lot of the shit that would come up when people were trying to connect to a pre-written character was, I don't think my character would do that. I don't think my character would do that. It doesn't make sense why the character would do that. And the only answer I have to that is, can you find a situation in which the character would do that? And that's the character that you need to play. Because I do not think, presented with an infinite amount of possibilities, we would only do one thing, one way. Done.
Love that. And on that note, we're going to end it here. I promise you, Mindy is going to talk, but I got to do the little outro first. So thank you guys for joining us. We are going to be taking a little bit a break from these pre-recorded Tuesday campaigns. So we will be back in January with campaign 2 of Hallie's Children. Very excited to
Which
be coming
all of
back.
us are all going to be in.
Mindy is joining it. Very exciting. And you will be seeing Ida and Anoush back again, as well as Hathor and another familiar face. Courtney is going to be joining as well as a guest character, which is very exciting. So you'll be seeing that in the beginning of January. In the meantime, though, we are streaming on Twitch, and this Friday is going to be nice. We're calling it Rainbow Retrospective. It is going to be a chance for Sera, Cameron, myself, and David to all get together and kind of look back on this absolutely insane year that we've had of doing this. Like, it's gone in directions we weren't expecting. At least I wasn't expecting. So, and then we're going to be having a really fun little one shot with just the 4 of us. Cam is going to be DMing that one as well. I won't give any spoilers about it. I think it's just going to be fun for them to experience.
Can I say what it? I want to.
Okay, yeah, you can explain. You're the DM. You can.
I'm not the dungeon master anymore. I'm the game master, and not only am I the game master, I am. That's it. The whole game is me. They're all playing me in a world of me doing me things.
Oops, all Cam.
Oops, all Cam. Merry holidays. Happy Kwanzaa.
And then, so that'll be the 22nd. So this Friday coming up. And then there's going to be David will be coming back on the 29th for a one shot, I believe, with our friend Bastion, who played Oddwood. It's going to be a one-on-one thing, but it's going to be really interesting what he's been talking about. So yeah. Keep up with our streams. They're on Twitch, but they're also on YouTube. Whichever platform is easier for you to do, just jump on, comment. We are having cool giveaways. I have them on my desk right here. So the giveaways are fun stickers, and I love that Cam's on the top. Look at Cam. Look at that cute boy.
How cute.
We're all cute. You are adorable. Yeah, you got a massive beard now. We need to get Jess to redo it. But anyway, and dice. We're also giving away 2 sets, or however many sets we want, of these amazing rainbow dice. So join us on Twitch and
streaming Rainbow. Get it?
We're finally living up to our name.
Right.
But yeah, also, yeah, so, and keep an eye on us in the new year, because a lot of things are happening, and we're going to be talking about all those things on the 22nd. So yeah, subscribe, get in the Discord, come talk to us, join our community, because we want to, what I say the other day, we're not parasocial, we're just social. So just come talk to us, and we would love to get to know you and talk about nerdy TTRPG stuff. Yeah, so I guess have a good night. And we will be seeing you everywhere, but specifically in the Discord. So.
Epilogue. We'll try again tomorrow. This became the regular refrain of the king of the eighth circle of hell as he strove to claim the soul of the Lady Elizabeth Matilda Catherine Annalinda Williams III. Days became weeks, became months, years, centuries even. It was hard to tell as time has no meaning in a place like Scheherazade. While the drones of Mephisto would try tactic after tactic, appealing to her sense of ego, justice, intellect, the story would always end with Elizabeth finding herself in the White Room after falling from Eleanor's gray hands in the icy cold of the Arctic, being asked to choose between two doors. The battle of wits would again begin, Mephistopheles making his case, offering the life of happiness Elizabeth had always wanted, or having her step into the dark of the unknown. It's not to say the lady wasn't tempted. She was. Oh, how she was tempted. As she watched the scenes of joy the demon promised her, Elizabeth couldn't help but yearn for the personal paradise it offered. Respect, recognition, family taken returned to her once more, growing old with the love of her life. It was that last one which would always snap her back into herself. As she gazed upon the smiling visage of Brendan Thistlespring through the door, Elizabeth's mind would go back to the Arctic and their last conversation on the Sparrowhawk's ship. She had offered Brendan an escape. Using the scroll Leonardo da Vinci had given her, they could have a new life together, if that is what made him happy. His reply was he could only be happy knowing that she was too. Elizabeth had spent her life fighting the expectations of the world she lived in. As a lady of nobility, she was nothing more than a future bauble to parade on a gentleman's arm, and the brood mare to another man who would then continue to overshadow her worth. She became an inventor to prove herself, to break out of the box that society, and particularly her father, had tried so hard to force her into. She knew she could never be truly happy unless she had the power to create it herself. As beautifully wrapped as what Mephistopheles offered was, deep down she knew she would just be stepping into another box. While she could lie to herself that she could be content in this manufactured fantasy, she couldn't lie to Brendan. So each time she turned around and walked into the black. Elizabeth never saw the impact that action would make. How her constant choice was chipping away at the power of her demonic overlord. However, like a stream wearing down the side of a mountain as it reclaimed its path, each slamming of that door would leave him weaker, his grasp on her and everyone else in Scheherazade thinning down to threads. Until one day, similar to all the others, Elizabeth stood with Leonardo da Vinci, asking to be able to enter his mind. With her gadget in her hand, ready to read his thoughts, she saw the blue flash in his eyes, just as she had unknowingly seen countless times before. But this time, she was able to break in. An eternity flashed before her. She was overwhelmed with her idol's ideas and theorems that caught her attention in her youth, until she was able to watch Da Vinci's own choice between the doors. Elizabeth saw the consequences, the chains of blue light that bound him and the rest of Scheherazade to their master. And then she saw the role he played in her game, saw her story from the point of view of those who strove to manipulate it time and time again before Dr. Lolth kicked her out and sent her to her end in the Arctic once more. Back on the Sparrowhawk ship, Elizabeth proceeded to carry out the end of her story with its planning with Laura and Sera, and of course, the tenderness of her last moments with Brendan. Then she walked to her flying machine, knowing who would be waiting there to greet her. As Eleanor Gray screamed and snarled her demands for vengeance, she simply said, "No." For you see, in a game where everything is rigged against you, the only way to win is not to play. Taking out the scroll, Elizabeth closed her eyes and began to create. She could feel the shifting of the ice beneath her feet as it cracked, but she stood firm. She heard the avalanches of the snowy peaks as the mountains began to break apart around her. She even felt the heat of Eleanor's claws at her neck before they dissolved into so much dust. When everything was once again calm, Elizabeth finally opened her eyes. She was back on the cobblestone streets of Grimshire. Did it work? Or was she stuck back in Mephisto's story loop? Her mind was troubled as she walked past the university until something caught her eye. Looking through the window into what she knew to be Professor Gray's old classroom, she saw the elf at her desk next to what was likely a student, both staring intently at a test tube that had been placed in a centrifuge. After it was done spinning, the student took the vial and poured its contents into a wilting plant on the desk, which immediately perked into bloom. The joy the student felt was only enhanced by the embrace of her teacher, beaming at their accomplishment together. Elizabeth had pondered whether to bring Eleanor into her new world. She ultimately decided that if she was going to give herself the opportunity to create her own story, it would be thoughtless of her not to give Eleanor the chance to write hers. Elizabeth would later learn that Professor Eleanor Gray, with the blind eye and burn scars still on her neck, was a revered mentor among the students of the university for her own significant contributions to medicine, teaching those with disabilities that they too could achieve greatness. While they never did interact again outside of an occasional meeting of strangers in the marketplace, Elizabeth was proud of her. After that hopeful scene, Elizabeth walked through the streets toward Williams Manor. Oh, excuse me, not. I changed that. No, that's right. After that hopeful scene, Elizabeth walked through the streets toward Williams Manor, an increasing hope forming in her heart as she noticed more women than normal entering the university as students or acting independently as business owners in the shops among the marketplace. Not to mention seeing gnomes being not just present, but regarded kindly in the streets. With an increasing flush of hope entering her heart, Elizabeth, first walking, then running, made her way to the forest, to the door of her beloved workshop. Timidly, with her heart pounding in her ears, she opened it. A gentle humming was being made by the lone gnome at his workbench. His hair and beard curly white, and he wore a leather apron that Elizabeth knew all too well. The force of her embrace of Joseph Thistlespring was enough to lift him off his feet, holding him as though he would vanish in a puff of smoke the second she loosened her grip. Eventually, she put him down, and while he didn't understand what caused her flood of emotion, Joseph listened as the words poured from her, the words she had said time and time again over the dirt of his grave, of her thankfulness of his support, how his care had helped mold her into the tenacious woman that she had become, and how she loved him as the father she had always wished she'd had. Wiping the tears from his eyes, Joseph took Elizabeth's hand, letting her know that she always had a family with him. With a slight smile, she replied that while she would be honored to carry the name of Thistlespring, she'd prefer to obtain it in a different way. In Gnomish, a language Joseph didn't even know she could speak, Elizabeth asked, "How would you feel having a human for a daughter-in-law?" Almost on cue, Elizabeth glanced over to see Brendan listening in from the doorway. Immediately, she ran to Brendan, skinning her knees as she got down to his level, the tears streaming down both of their faces, and with tears streaming down both of their faces, kissed him with the same passion as he had done back on the Sparrowhawk ship. Elizabeth had managed to use the silver cord that tied them to each other to pull them through the depths of hell and out the other side. As you may have guessed, it wasn't long before the Lady Williams became Madame Thistlespring. In a blue dress with golden brocade, Joseph led her down the aisle, being smiled upon by her bridesmaids. Sera, once under the mentorship of the Sparrowhawk, had been making a name for herself as a successful privateer. As the Sparrowhawk had predicted, she truly was a wonder as the dread pirate Roberts. Laura was making her way as an entrepreneur. In a little shop in the center of Market Street, she was actually making quite a bit of profit with her one-of-a-kind clothes. They weren't quite bedtime wear. It was more like wearing a soft stuffed animal, onesies, she called them. And while Elizabeth never saw the appeal, Annabelle practically lived in hers. Annabelle, right, I'll get back to her in a moment. As Elizabeth's maid of honor was the beaming Lord Percival Blakeney Nathaniel Edward Williams III, now the true Lord of Williams Manor. Even the Lord Arthur Edmund Charles William Williams III decided to push through his hangover and make an appearance. So with rings smoothed from bolts and adorned with diamonds normally used on their drill bits, Elizabeth and Brendan pledged their lives to one another, for better or for worse, though content in the knowledge that the worst had already happened. Brendan got that picket fenced house that he had always wanted to share with his beloved wife. The workshop was expanded, first to allow for Joseph and the newlyweds to work together. Then room was made for a young lady with her mother's hair and her father's heart, Annabelle Elizabeth Sera Laura Thistlespring III. Always looking under the microscope, she yearned to understand the depths and secret treasures hidden in the world around her. Later, her little brother, Joseph Leonardo Brendan Percival Thistlestring Jr., whose curiosity and sense of wonder would instead seek to discover the heavenly universes beyond the stars. The flying machine still hung against the workshop wall, and occasionally Elizabeth would take it down to soar above the buildings and people of the town. She still invented, still created, but no longer felt the need to show off her creations. For as she watched the lives of the people down below, her heart was filled with the knowledge that she now lived in a world of her design, where creativity was treasured, where anyone, regardless of their status and nobility, was allowed the chance to change the world and write their own stories outside of any pretty boxes they were expected to fit. That, if ever at a fancy salon or ball, while you might find yourself facing the mindless gossip and backbiting of those like Crystal Decanter, you're just as likely to find an Ada Lovelace, musing on the poetry of mathematical theory as though she were describing a dear lover. As the white in Elizabeth's hair began to grow beyond its initial streak of white. As the white in Elizabeth's hair began to grow beyond its initial streak, reflecting her ever-growing love towards the one who had always been her anchor, a love that was mirrored in the gray that began to form in his, as well as the two of their children while they fought, played, and explored the world together. Elizabeth was content in the knowledge that she no longer had anything she needed to prove, that she had seen the course of fate and had faced its mistakes, or more correctly, its scars, molding it and mending it, and ultimately making the world a better place. And they all lived happily, which is all any of them ever wanted to begin with. The end.